Welcome back, listeners, to Sandman Stories Presents, a folklore podcast where I read you to sleep or until the next story. I'm your host, Dustin. If you want a little extra Sandman, I have extra stories that are too spicy for the main feed, available on my Patreon, and you can join at the free tier and get everything. Today we are starting a new book of Ugandan folklore to replace the Nigerian folklore book. In the first story, we learn about the origins of a soft tree with pretty flowers. And in the second, we learn about the heartless humans and how to cure sadness. Okay, let's begin. The Flame Tree. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in the village of C. Her parents had no other children, and as she grew older, they saw with joy that she was more beautiful every day. People who passed through the village saw her and spoke of her beauty until everyone in Kyagwe knew that the most lovely girl in the country lived in the village of C, and everyone in the province called her the Maiden. The maiden was a gentle, sweet child, and loved all the animals and birds and butterflies and flowers, and played with them and knew their language. Her parents were very proud of her, and often talked of the time when she should grow up and marry a great chief, with many cows and gardens and people, and bring great wealth to her tribe. When the time came to arrange her marriage, all the chiefs came and offered many gifts, as the custom of the Baganda is. But the maiden said, "I will marry none of these rich chiefs. I will marry Tutu, the peasant boy who has nothing, because I love him." Her parents were very grieved when they heard this, and would have tried to persuade her, but just then, a messenger arrived from the Sekibobo to say that the king of Uganda was going to war with Mububi, the chief of the Buvuma Islands, and all the chiefs went away to collect their people for the king's army. Then the chief of Si, who is called Kibevu, called all his men together, and Tutu the peasant boy went with them. The army marched down to the shore to fight the islanders, who came across the blue waters in a fleet of war canoes, painted and decorated with horns and feathers and cowrie shells and beads. The maiden was very sad when she said goodbye to Tutu. "Be very brave and win glory," she said. "Then my father will let me marry you, for I will never marry anyone else." But when the men had marched away, and only the women and children were left in the village with the old people, the maiden forgot her brave words, and could only think about how she could bring Tutu safely back. She called to her friend the hawk. "Come and help me, Double Eye. Fly quickly to the lake shore and see my peasant boy. Tell me I think of him day and night. I cannot be happy until he returns." The hawk knew Tutu well, for often on the hillside he had played with the children. The Baganda called him Double Eye, for they say that with one eye he watches the earth, and with the other he sees where he is going. The Baganda reached the lake, and there was a great battle, and Tutu the peasant boy was killed by a stone from an islander's sling. But the Baganda rallied and drove the enemy back to their canoes, and Mububi beat the retreat drum, and his men returned to Buvuma. The hawk flew very quickly, and while he was still a long way off, he saw Tutu lying there where he had fallen on the lake shore. The soldiers were burying the dead, and the hawk watched to see where they would bury the peasant boy of C, so that he might show the maiden his grave. The maiden waited on the hillside for the hawk's return, and the moments seemed like hours. She called to a bumblebee who was near her friend. "Go quickly to the lakeside and greet my peasant boy. Tell him I wait here on the hillside for his return." The bumblebee flew away quickly, and when it reached the lake shore, he asked the hawk for news. "The islanders have fled in their canoes, but Tutu the peasant boy is dead. A stone from a sling killed him. I wait to see his grave, so that I may show it to the maiden." The bumblebee was afraid to go back with the news, so he stayed near the hawk and watched. Meanwhile, the maiden waited in a fever of impatience, ever gazing at the distant lake and pacing up and down. She saw a flight of white butterflies playing hide and seek round a mimosa bush and called to them. "Oh, white butterflies, how can you play when my heart is breaking? Go to the lake shore to see if my peasant boy is well." So the white butterflies flew away over the green hills to the lake, and arrived on the battlefield just as the soldiers were digging Tutu's grave, and they settled sadly down on a tuft of grass. their wings drooping with sorrow, for they loved the maiden who often played with them in the sunshine. Far away in the sea hills, the maiden watched in vain for their return. Filled with fear, she cried to the sun, "O chief of the cloudland, help me! Take me on one of your beams to the lake shore, so that I may see my peasant boy and tell him of my love." The sun looked down on her with great pity, for he had seen the battle and knew that Tutu the peasant boy was dead. He stretched out one of his long beams, and she caught it in her hands, and he swung her gently round till she rested on the lake shore. When she saw the soldiers lifting Tutu's body to lay it in the grave, she cried to the sun, "O chief of the cloudland, do not leave me. Burn me with your fire, for how can I live now that my love is dead?" Then the sun was filled with pity and struck her with a hot flame, and the soldiers were very sorry for her too, and they dug a grave for her next to Tutu's. When the people of Sea visited the graves the next year, they found a wonderful thing, for a beautiful tree had grown out of them with large flame-colored blossoms, which ever turned upwards to the sun. And they took their seeds and planted them in their gardens. Now the country is full of these beautiful trees which are called flame trees, but the old people call them kifabagazi, because the stem is as soft as a woman's heart, and a woman can cut it down. The end. Okay, and story number 2, The Buffalo Maiden. There once was a little girl who lived with her uncle and aunt. Her uncle loved her, but the aunt was always unkind to her. Now, this aunt was really a witch, but nobody knew it. One day she said to her husband, "You must send that little girl away. I cannot stand her any more. She is so naughty. But go first to the forest, to the old wizard who lives there, and he will tell you what to do." So the old man went to the forest, but he did not know that his wife had told the wizard what to say. The wizard said, "Take the little girl to the forest and leave her there." Then he was sorry for the man and added, "If you do this, good fortune will come to the child, but many years must pass." Very sadly the man returned home. He took a gourd of milk and some Indian corn, and told his little niece to follow him into the forest. When they had walked a long way, they sat down to rest, and the child was so tired that she fell asleep at once. Then the uncle put down the gourd of milk and the Indian corn and went sorrowfully home. When the child woke, it was very dark in the forest, and she was terrified at the sounds round her, and feared the wild animals might come and eat her. But she heard a chirping voice in the tree above her, and saw a large cricket sitting on a branch just over her head. "Climb up into this tree," said the cricket, "and you will find a nice bed to sleep in." So the child climbed up at the fork of the tree, and there was a lovely place full of dry leaves, where she curled up and was soon again fast asleep. The next morning she saw that several buffaloes were resting under her tree, and as she was very hungry she thought, "I will go and ask the cow buffalo to give me some milk." The buffaloes were very sorry for the child left all alone in the forest, and they said, "You will soon die of hunger here. Come and live in our kraal in the jungle, and you shall have milk every day and a little hut of your own." So the little girl climbed on the old cow buffalo's back, who was the granny of the herd, and went with her to the kraal, which was hidden away in the thick jungle. At first she was sad and unhappy and homesick. She wanted her uncle and her friends in the village at home, and the old granny buffalo could do nothing to comfort her. Then the great bull buffalo who ruled the herd called a council of animals together and said, "How can we make a child happy who has come to live with us in the forest?" The animals were very much distressed, for they all wanted to be kind. But the child sat and sobbed, for she was lonely and homesick. Just then, an old tortoise, who had been asleep for many years, woke up and came shuffling into the council. "The child will be quite happy if you take away her heart," he said. "For "It is the heart of a woman that brings all the trouble into the world. If she cannot love, she will have no trouble. If she has no heart, she'll be quite happy." So they cut out the little girl's heart and tied it up in wild plantain leaves and hung it up in a cedar tree. And they built her a hut under the cedar tree, and she settled down happily and cried no more, and her heart hung far above, out of reach where no one could touch it. From that moment on, the child changed. At first the buffalo granny was pleased because she stopped crying and was quiet. But soon she grew puzzled because the little girl was so strange. Every day she did unkind things, and she laughed when she hurt the little animals. She pushed the little cubs into the forest pools when they came for a drink, and she climbed up into the trees and threw little birds that couldn't fly out of their nests. And when their mothers cried, she laughed at them and clapped her hands. There was one animal who had not been at the great bull buffalo's council. The little hare was away at the time, on a long journey, but when he returned, the other animals told him about it. He looked very grave. The little hare knows more about people than any other animal, for he often goes to the villages and he understands man's language. He watched the little girl. Every day he grew sadder. Years passed by, and the child grew up into a beautiful woman. But she had no friends in the forest, and all the animals were afraid of her, and none of them loved her. If they growled, she stared at them, and they slunk off, for her eyes frightened them. One day, the Sekibobo's men were hunting buffaloes, and one of them followed a wounded animal through the jungle when, to his surprise, he saw a lovely girl come down the forest path. When she saw the wounded buffalo, she laughed and went back, and the man was so frightened that he came back the way he had come, and told the other hunters, and they told the chief. Then the chief sent a party of men to the forest, and they followed the hunter's trail and came to the buffalo's kraal, and there they saw a beautiful girl milking a buffalo and singing, "I am the buffalo maiden, the buffalo kraal is my home, jungle land is my kingdom, wherever I will roam. I hate the golden sunbeams that fill the glades with light. I hate the silver moonbeams that chill my hut at night. The birds are dumb when they see me, the animals are my foes, for I am the buffalo maiden, as all the jungle knows." They were afraid to speak, and they went quietly back. Then the Sekibobo went to the capital and told the chiefs in the king's council, and the king and all the princes heard that a beautiful girl lived alone in the depths of the forest in the buffalo kraal. There was one prince braver and kinder than the others, and he was sorry for the girl, so he took one man with him and went to the forest to find her. But when he found her, he loved her very much. But the girl only laughed at him and threw stones at him. Some of the stones hit him, and they hurt very much, and every day he grew more and more miserable. One day, while he was walking in the forest, he found a doe with a sharp thorn in its foot. He took the thorn out and carried the poor tired creature to its home. The doe was very grateful and said, "Tell me what I can do to thank you." And the prince answered, "Tell me how I can make the girl I love me." The doe was very sorrowful. "You will never make her love you. She is unkind and cruel to everyone. But I will ask the other animals, and perhaps they can give me some advice." So when the doe's foot was healed, she went to the big gray elephant and asked his advice. "Tell your prince," said the big gray elephant, "that the girl is cruel and unkind. He had better seek a wife in the capital." So the doe went to the lion. "If the prince has been kind to you, he is much too good for the girl," he said. "She is hard and cruel and never sheds tears as the women in the villages do." All the animals said the same thing, and at last the doe met the little hare and told him her trouble. "It isn't her fault," said the hare. "They took away her heart from her when she was a little girl. How can she be kind without a heart? Let the prince steal her heart that hangs in the cedar tree, and then she will love him." So the doe went and told the prince, "You must steal her heart which hangs in the cedar tree above her hut, but you must go alone at night." So the prince went alone through the dark forest at night, and came to the buffalo's kraal. The moonlight was shimmering through the gray shadows, as he picked his way between the sleeping buffaloes up to the maiden's hut, and there above him in the cedar tree hung the heart. He climbed the tree and clasped the heart in his arms, and as he did, the girl asleep in the hut below felt great fear. "Someone has touched my heart," she cried. Softly and tremulously she opened the door and saw the prince, and fell at his feet, sobbing, "Oh, my lord, you have my heart in your arms. Take me too." So the prince took her away to the capital, and they lived happily together for many years. The big gray elephant called a forest council together, and they passed sentence on the old tortoise and killed him, because his advice had been so bad. For this is the law of the Mabira forest. If any animal gives bad advice to the council, he is killed. And the forest council sent a messenger to the prince and told him what they had done. And he was glad, for though the heart of the woman causes all the trouble in the world, it also brings all the joy, and her tears are like the spring rains and make the earth beautiful. The end. Well, I really like the origin of the flower and tree story. It was heartbreaking to read about the girl and her love, and I'm not sure what would happen if I lost Hyung. That would really destroy me. I might ask to be burned by the sun. And the second story was just lovely, and it shows how having a heart is important. I didn't like all the trouble in the world's from a woman's heart. Didn't like that. But the rest of it was pretty cool. And I try to take it with me everywhere that having a heart is important, caring about people is important, being kind is important. Let's try to be kind. Still, not bad for the first two stories of the book. And the podcast Shoutout is to Chatsunami, a couple of Scottish dudes talking about gaming and anime and lots of other nerdy stuff. They are fairly laid back and both have a lot of fun talking about stuff they enjoy. And so if you like their show as much as I do, go and give them a like, a listen, and a review. And if you want to join me on my Patreon, you can always do it for free and hear me reading spicy stories. And the listener shout-out is to San Carlos City in the Philippines. It is located in the Negritos Occidental province. The name Negritos Occidental refers to the Austronesians that were some of the first inhabitants of that area. They have darker skin and shorter, curlier hair than the rest of the Philippines. The city was originally named Nabingkalan, after a Negritos chief's daughter, Nabingka. She is said to be gorgeous, smart, and strong. In 1856, a new name was given to the ever-enlarging city, San Carlos City, and it has been under the flags of America, Japan, and the Philippines, as it is to this day. And of course, I would love to visit. The Philippines has a special place in my heart. And I was looking for the language of the Negritos, but it says most of them use Tagalog or other languages now. Their native language is pretty well gone. And since I couldn't find their language, I say to my listeners in San Carlos City, thank you and good night.